All right, we are into a new chapter. It's the last chapter of the quarter, and I think it's the chapter that should be easy enough for you to kind of get things caught up on. It is a very simple, straightforward chapter. You just have to make sure you work to get the things understood. Today is going to focus on the number line. It's a concept that's often overlooked, and because of its simplicity, but it's important when it comes to visualizing numbers. For example, it's easy to understand that 5 is larger than 4, but many people have an issue deciding if -6 is larger than -2. In this situation, the number line can help. If you compare 1 and 5, you notice that 1 is here, 5 is here, and 5 is larger. The larger number is on the right. If you compared 2 and 6, the larger number is on the right. If you compared 0 and 4, the larger number is on the right. So, if you were to compare -6 and -2, which one's bigger would be -2. So again, as simple as a number line seems, it actually helps you to understand a bigger number. So -2 is bigger than -6 because -2 is further to the right. In other words, on a number line, larger numbers this way, that says large by the way, just forgot the R, and the smaller numbers go that way. Okay, so again, larger numbers on that side, smaller numbers on that side, and you can use that to your advantage. Plotting points is the key process of today's work though. We'll do a lot of basic numbers first. In terms of just making sure we know how to identify what those are. So what point's being plotted on the number line here? This is the one where you have to actually count and be careful, because again, if you're not careful, you'll pick something that's crazy. And I purposely only mark these, so you have to make sure you learn to count on your own. So 5, 6, that would be 7. And so you choose the answer 7, or type the answer 7 in there. Here you can either go 5, 4, 3, or 0, 1, 2, 3, but either way that number is 3. Make sure you understand that. Again, if you don't, let me know. But again, from here it goes -1 on, so it goes -1 here. And this is -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. However you have to do that, just make sure you know how to identify those numbers. Again, be sure you can identify a positive and a negative. I think the positives are easy, but just make sure you practice doing the negatives, because that's really where you earn your points, is on the negative values. The tricky problems are going to be zoomed in a bit for this so you can focus. We've been learning all year about the following values, which is 0.1, 0.25, 0.75, and 0.9. And we've discussed that the easiest to identify is 0.5 because it's halfway through. So we know that if we have a number here and a number there, that 0.5 is going to be somewhere about in the middle. That's easy. And we've discussed that the next easiest values are 0.25 and 0.75. So if you're talking about that, those are half of a half. So in other words, if this is your 0.5, then half of that would be 0.25, and half of that would be 0.75. And so it's kind of easy to visualize. As long as you can kind of visualize half, which you'll see me do, then it should kind of let you know that that's a quarter. Again, quarter, 50 cents, 75 cents, $1. That's pretty much how that works. So when you break it into fours, that's what you're doing. 25 cents, 50 cents, 75 cents, $1. But half of a 50 cent is a 25, or another quarter past that is going to be 75. So again, although we have not really discussed 0.1 and 0.9 is easy, I have understood or discussed that their ideas are simple to understand, or easy to understand. 0.1 is extremely close to the low end of the value, so it'll be somewhere over here. 0.9 is extremely close to the high point of the value, so it'll be somewhere over here. And as long as it's not half of a half or at the halfway point, it's pretty easy to kind of see there. So keep those ideas in mind as we work through the examples that are going to be popping up here. And this is really where all of our work is, so make sure you're, again, taking good notes and thinking. So it's going to say what value is being plotted. So your job is to recognize this between 5 and 6. Okay, it's between 5 and 6. So now you want to say, well, it's not 0.5, because 0.5 would be about there. But think about the halfway point. Is that dot in between where my pen is at and where the dot is? I don't think it is. To me, that's pretty close to 6, which means that this is a 0.9, and because it's after the 5, it will be 5.9. All right, so again, halfway point, I kind of, you could take your mouse on this and put your mouse at about where halfway is, and you can see that that's not half. So it's not like something that's going to be tricky, because when it is half, you'll know it. For example, on B, that's between 2 and 3. My halfway point is about here. And when you look at that, that is about half. So therefore, we know that that's half of a half, which means that that would be your quarter. So 0.25. And since it's after 2, it'll be 2.25. Looking at the next one, you can see if you put your pencil or mouse at the midway point, that is definitely not a quarter. Again, a quarter here, no, so it's not a quarter, which means that this is 0.1, and because it's after 8, it is 8.1. All right. The next one is not a half, but if you look at it, it is about the middle of the half, which means that it goes 25, 50, 75, so 0.75 is my number, and since it's after 2, it would be 2.75, about. And then the last one on that page is at the half. So 0.5 it is, and this is 9.5. So again, notice everything I did was off the half. I checked the halfway point, compared it to halfway, saw that this wasn't at the half, so it had to be 0.9. I checked the halfway point here, saw that it was halfway there, so that's your quarter. All right. Here, check the halfway point. Notice that it wasn't in the midway through because it's closer to that side, which means it's 0.1. Here we did it again, check the halfway point, it's about the middle, so that has to be 3/4, and then here it's right on the halfway point, so it had to be 0.5. The tough work is going to be in your negatives because negatives don't count the same direction. So when I do this, pay attention because this is where you're going to have your fight. This is the halfway point. That is halfway, but that's not a quarter. Because if you remember, counting from 5 to 6, it would go 5, 5 1/4, 5.5. This would be 0.75. Again, with the negatives, it counts backwards. So even though it is one of the either 0.25 or 0.75, because it's going here, it's going to be 25, 50, 75. And so this is negative 5.75. Again, that's a negative 5 there to a negative 6. And notice that 5.75 should be pretty close to 6. That's why that happened. On this one here, I don't think that's in between the halfway point, which means it's either a 0.1, and this is where you have to think, it's either a 0.1 or a 0.9. Well, if I'm counting from 1 to 2, that's obviously going to be 1, and that's going to be 9, so this is negative 1.9. Again, starting from here, between 1 and 2, it's got to be closer to 2, which means it's going to be 0.9, and because it's negative, put the negative 1 in front of it. Here, halfway point there, that seems to be about half, so it's either 0.25 or 0.75, so now we count by quarters. Negative 3, negative 3.25, so there we go. Again, 3.75 would be over here pretty close to 4, and that's where you have to kind of use your number sense a little bit. Here, it's not the halfway point. It's not the halfway of the halfway point, which means it's either a 0.1 or a 0.9. Notice how it's closer to the smaller number, so this would be a 0.1, and because it's negative 4 and negative 5, it's negative 4.1. Again, this is where your work's going to be. And then here, that's definitely a 0.5, so I don't think we have to worry about it. It's between 4 and 5, so it's negative 4.5 would be what you're doing. Just remember with negatives, you are counting this way. So instead of going, you know, like you would with 1, 2, 3, you're going negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. And again, with negatives, you're counting that way. That's why it's 4, 4.5. That's why it's negative 4, negative 4.1. That's why it's negative 3, negative 3.25, 3.5, 3.75, because you're moving away from the number that way. So remember that the key idea with these is to think about the halves and trust your instincts. As you continue to adjust, you'll eventually learn to understand what the values look like, and really that's what it's about. Also, as I said, remember to invert your thinking when working with negative decimals, and just let me know where you need assistance. Again, put your answer in the page and take a screenshot, and I'll be glad to discuss what you might have done wrong and help you fix your thinking. Other than that, have a good day, and I'll talk to you later. Good luck.